porque no te salte camino regresará. Dile ahora que la amas, o nunca volverás a verla más. Su vacilación será su destrucción, su propia prisión. Si la perderás un día mirando atrás, te arrepentirás. Corre, teri, porque no te salte camino regresará. Dile ahora que la amas, o nunca volverás a verla más. Tu vacilación será su destrucción, su propia prisión. Si la perderás un día mirando atrás, te arrepentirás. Coro, coro, cani, cani, no me abandonas, yo te juro mi amor. Aún puedo alcanzarte, porque sin tu amor me moriré.
Terry Terry New York is a sequel to Terry Terry Opera, which is a Spanish-language operatic retelling of my favorite story ever, Candy Candy, written by Keiko Nagita. Instead of telling Candy White's entire epic life story, I have focused solely on Candy's tragic love affair with Terry Granchester. Illustrated by Yumiko Igarashi, Candy Candy manga was originally penned in black ink. Unlike macho American comics for boys, Candy Candy manga is calm, ornate, and elaborate, dare I say, for girls, with lines evoking the Edwardian nostalgia of the 1970s for Art Nouveau, a movement about communion with nature within an industrialized planet. Created by Toei Animation between 1976 and 1979, Candy Candy anime is a vividly colorful reduction of the rich textures of the grayscale manga, but beautiful in its own 70s Japan pastel fever dream right, although currently circulating JPEGs and MP4s are bootlegs with very low resolution. But the author and illustrator had a fight with each other, and this is why we can't have nice things, and due to the legal battle between the two, every version of the manga and of the anime are considered contraband, which is why I decided to digitally restore every scene I found relevant to the retelling of the anime by resolving any discrepancies among the two by defaulting to the manga and cross-checking the language in order to get the most accurate understanding of the story without redundancy or interpretational error. Therefore, the lyrics to both operas have been very carefully calibrated to abide verbatim to the words of the author. For all who love Candy, Candy's beauty comes from within. But my choice for casting would be Australian model GEMMA WARD, whose face, in my opinion, is very proportionately symmetrical, aka adorable. I think her face is very smooth. However, my sister pointed out that Candy is a little pointier. Therefore, my second contender for who would be cast as Candy would be KATE HUDSON, who has a slightly pointier nose and who is incredibly cute and likable. Because the manga is in grayscale, I do not know what color eyes Terry has, but I've always believed his eyes were brown. But in the anime, he's depicted with blue eyes, so I go with that. And so when it comes to Terry, I feel that the only person who would be cast to play him would be French sex symbol ALAIN DELON. I will not be expanding any further on that. Susanna is the girl from all of our nightmares, and I believe she was visually based upon FRANCESCA ANNIS, who plays Lady Macbeth in Roman Polanski's 1971 film adaptation of Macbeth. They are both Shakespearean actors and quintessentially 70s movie star types. However, in today's terms, I believe that someone like Amber Heard would be perfect to be cast for the role of Susanna, completely beautiful and completely mentally ill. If one were to be casting for the role of Robert Hathaway, I believe that JOHN FINCH, who plays Macbeth, would have been chosen. Robert Hathaway is Terry's mentor, who contrasts the Duque of Granchester in his warmth and guidance. Terry wants to be nothing like his father. I think Ron Moss, from the soap opera The Bold and the Beautiful, would make a perfect casting for Terry's father. Karen Kleiss is based on me, and the red-headed, bearded background actor at the Strasford Troupe is based on my husband Josh, who doesn't have any lines, only because he doesn't sing or speak Spanish. Yumiko Igarashi drew Terry with high collars, bell-bottoms, and long hair, which dates the original artwork in the 1970s, even going as far as to show the passage of time by the length of Terry's hair, which is absurd because obviously men wore their hair very short in the purported time period whilst getting regular haircuts. In order to demonstrate Terry's physical maturation, I have instead opted for a broader jawline, a 5 o'clock shadow, and a little mustache. This is also a wink to the evil Spock trope. Obviously, the fashion of the 1910s is a mixture of the 19th and 20th centuries, creating a peculiar style unlike any other before or after. So creating the clothing required a lot of research, about which I have made other videos. Visually, Terry New York is but an Edwardian-era film noir. The noir quality is obvious in the drama and tragedy therein, but visually I have toned down the cuteness of the anime and created what I hope is a more nuanced color palette, in order to focus on the dialogue and music and less on the childlike color schemes, despite the nostalgia they evoke. I considered releasing the film in monochrome, but the color, I feel, mitigates and contrasts some of the pain of the story. The opera started with 4 pieces of music: the expulsion, the all-nighter, the decision, and the name. As a sequence, these 4 pieces, which are narrated in past tense in the manga, create the sum of the beginning of the end, of the love affair between Candy and Terry. So after that, I wrote another 56 pieces to complete Terry, an opera of 3 acts, winter, spring, and summer, each containing 20 songs. Nagita actively describes the changing of the seasons as perceived by her characters to show the cyclical nature of life and death, both literally and metaphorically. The 3 acts reflect the seasons in the same way. Terry New York is also divided in 3 acts: the road, the dream, and the premiere, with a sum of 55 pieces of music which I composed, lyricized, performed, recorded, and produced in order to complete the second opera. I've studied and played music the majority of my life, but I never completed my composition degree, so all my music is technically naive, although I have created a rudimentary formula which I follow in order to write essentially pop music. Before the formula, in the early 2000s, I wrote primarily structurally expressionist music, atonal, dissonant, chaotic, and visceral. These pieces are reserved to illustrate the darker and more intense moments of the film. Therefore, every piece of music tells a story with or without the lyrics or images. The first glimpse of surrealism is when Terry visualizes the Duque of Granchester's face on Rob Hathaway's body. Terry, who plays young Seward, tries to kill Macbeth, but is instead killed by the king. Therefore, Terry draws inspiration for his roles from his own pain and anger toward his father, which fuels his success as an actor. When Candy is caring for Albert in the hospital, I have heavily distorted Candy's face in order to make it unrecognizable to Albert, who has amnesia, and I have distorted his face as well in the moments which he loses touch with reality. When Terry finds out that Candy is living with Albert, Terry is seen running in an autumnal landscape, which is not a memory but a fantasy of his desire to be with her. The images of Great War propaganda give a taste of the American political climate at the time. In Act 2, the juxtaposition of Candy as the sun and Susanna as the moon begins as the aspect ratio changes from 16:9 to 4:3. The switch to the fully restored original anime style with a more cohesive color palette of cool violets and dark purples contrasts Susanna's pale complexion and fair hair to create the illusion of a moonlit night sky. The surrealist choice becomes the play between worlds of fantasy and reality and the unknown henceforth. It is unclear what is happening until we see Candy waking up from her dream as anime, and then, as she forgets her dream, she returns to her previous normal form. She is seen giving herself a weird look in the bathroom mirror, questioning whether her dream was a fantasy, a memory, an intuition, or a premonition. Like with all dreams, no one knows, perhaps a memory from a parallel universe.